Good news, everyone. Welcome to 4.4, question 14. Timeline of cash flow and the present value of an annuity due. Meyer Mining Company leases a special drilling press with an annual payment of $130,000. The contract calls for rent payments at the beginning of the year for a minimum of 10 years. Meyer Mining can buy a similar drill for $920,000, but it will need to borrow the funds at 9%. So that's what's happening. First part, we need to understand, how is this represented on a timeline? Let's look at the first part of the question involving the lease. So we know there's a lease and we're making an annual payment of $130,000. And important too to know is that it's going to be paid at the beginning of each year. So the beginning means we know that they're going to be paying right away. So if we look at the timeline for A, we know that it can't be this because we're missing a payment at the beginning of year one. This looks like it's the end of year one. So let's forget about A. B looks okay for that, C looks okay for that, and D still seems to work. So we're down to B, C, and D. Now, let's take a look at the loan details. So we can buy the similar drill for $920,000, but we'll need to borrow the funds at 9%. So if we don't go with leasing, we'll buy the drill, but we need a loan for $920,000. Now, when we're getting a loan, we're definitely going to need it right away, and we're only going to need that loan payment once. So if we look at D, it looks a little strange because it looks like we're borrowing money quite a few times here. So that seems off. So we're down to B and C. Now the next question we might ask is, when do we need that loan? Well, you would think we need the loan right away so we can actually purchase the equipment. So it looks like B is looking pretty good because C, it doesn't seem like we're going to need that loan. That's way too late to get that loan. So let's take a look at B. Perhaps we're correct on that. All right, wonderful. So let's move on to section B of the question. So the next question is determine the present value of the lease payments at 9%. Well, let's consider what we know. We know our rate. We know the payment that we're making, which is $130,000 each year. And we know the number of periods. In this case, it looks like we're paying for 10 periods or 10 years. Okay. So our rate, let me just change this here. Our rate is 9%. And our payment looks like we have to pay $130,000 each year. So ultimately we're trying to figure out is the present value of this lease payment, and then we can compare it to the loan and see which one's a better option. Let us consider or use our function. Rate 9%, number of periods 10, payment 130,000, future value. And now in terms of the beginning or ending period, we're paying at the beginning, so it's important to recognize that for this. So it's actually going to be number 1 instead of 0 as we usually have done it. Okay? So there is our present value of our lease. Okay? So let's put that in. Hopefully we're correct, and then we can move on to the next part of the question. Because they're really asking some great questions here. Minds are getting critical. Wonderful. Finally, this is a tough question. I feel like I should leave it to you to determine. But ultimately, what they're asking is to compare the cost of leasing, which is the present value that we figured out, compared to actually purchasing the equipment, which would be a loan of $920,000. So determine which cost is higher. Based on that, which decision or financial decision would make more sense for this mining company in order to save money. All right, thanks for watching. Happy financing.